This video is part 2 of my Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild trailer and E3 gameplay review, so if you haven't seen part 1, click on this link right here and watch that. Or you can watch this one now out of order. It doesn't really matter. You can do what you want. I ain't your mother. Just letting you know. So whether you're watching this in order or not, let's get to it. So last we left off, we were just about to talk about some of the inhabitants of this world of Hyrule. First off, we see some familiar faces with the Koroks and the Deku Tree. Can they be familiar faces if we don't actually see their face? Familiar leaf faces? Right off the bat, I have to say it is really nice to see the Koroks and characters return from Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, especially since The Wind Waker is revered as one of the best Zelda games out there even today. From what I've seen in the E3 plays of Breath of the Wild, the Koroks are scattered throughout Hyrule, and if you find them, they will give you Korok seeds. And that's all I know. That's it. What these seeds do, I have no idea. I guess we'll just have to play the game to find out. Next! The Deku Tree also makes a couple of appearances in a couple of different trailers. I'm given the impression that the Deku Tree has a rather important role in this installation of The Legend of Zelda, and for some reason, my first thought is that he'll be given a kind of guardian role. We see in a couple of shots between different trailers that the Master Sword has been enshrined in front of the Deku Tree. We also hear that the Deku Tree will give Link a kind of play-by-play as to what has happened during his 100-year nap. And even Zelda ends up in front of the Deku Tree at some point in this game. So this Deku Tree reminds me a lot of the Ocarina of Time Deku Tree, and hopefully won't die within the first half hour of the game. 19-year-old spoilers? We also see that the Gorons are back in this installation of The Legend of Zelda, and hopefully he won't be the only one wandering around making us wonder where the hell all the other Gorons are and why Death Mountain has been invaded by sloth people. Bitter a little bit there once again, Sarah. I really don't like that game. Now this Goron in particular does remind me a lot of the Twilight Princess Gorons, which I'm a huge fan of to begin with because Twilight Princess is my favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. With the very short clip that we do get to see of Breath of the Wild's Goron, I do wonder if these Gorons, or maybe just this one specific Goron, will be able to use some kind of magic, cause that looks like some kind of magic to me. It's fire. This is blue. That's not normal. Our next character to look at is this girl we see with the red hair, whom I'm willing to bet all of my geeky stuffies is the Breath of the Wild's Gerudo. I regret nothing. Now, whether or not she's going to be some kind of Nabooru, which is high, it is very hard to say what exactly her role is going to be in this game. Because, you know, Nintendo, so original with the characters. Out of all of the questions this new character brings to the table, my biggest one is, what the hell is she holding? At first, I thought it was a harp, which reminded me a lot of Sheik from Ocarina of Time, or Neru from Oracle of Time. So it made me think that maybe she and the Gerudo were going to be a traveling circus or entertainment type group, as opposed to the thieves that they have been portrayed as in Ocarina of Time. But upon stopping the frames and looking at both angles we're given, I have deduced that it is gold and circular. And that's it. Seriously, I have no idea what this thing is. Is it a weapon? Is it a relic? I have no idea. But I'd say it's pretty obvious that she is a Gerudo, as we see her in desert scenes, and the physical similarities don't leave much up to question. Moving on to another race that we don't see very much of in the trailers, but I am very excited to see, is the Rito. You may remember these flying humanoid characters from, once again, The Wind Waker, but now they are taking on a much more birdie look. Are you not telling me something? Are you a Rito? Are you a Rito? These Rito are much less humanoid looking and seem like they will play a much larger role in this game than simple male carriers and carriers of a giant, fat, red dragon. We see that this Rito specifically is probably more of a warrior or even a scout kind of Rito. He has small pieces of armor suggesting he doesn't get into close combat very often and has a bow. I also really like the detail and characteristics they're putting into the different races in this game. With the Gerudo girl having hair accessories and jewelry and the Rito having a scarf, ankle bracelets, and even hair braids. Which I'm not sure how that works considering feathers, not braidable last I checked. effect. But it also adds so much more to the individual characters and personality of them. As to where the Rito live, my first guess is that they inhabit the flying fortress we see in the trailers. Why do I think that? Because it looks like a bird. And they look like birds. They're birds. That, and in the Life of Ruins trailer, we do see this Rito flying directly to the flying fortress, so call it a hunch. As long as it's not the flying pelicans, I'm okay with it. Skyward sword, skyward sword, skyward sword. The next and final race that I'm going to talk about is actually the race that I am most excited to see in this game, the Zoras. I've always loved the Zoras, and I love how the Zoras have changed throughout the games, from enemies that live in the rivers in Link to the Past, to the more isolated but beautiful Zoras from Ocarina of Time, to the species that highly regards musical talent from Majora's Mask, and then the water warriors with Twilight Princess. We see the Zoras take another interesting turn in development, with shots of different colored Zoras, and even Zoras that are clearly based off of different kinds of aquatic animals. The Zoras look really cool in the Breath of the Wild's version, with once again a lot of special accessories and different characterizations of these Zoras that actually help hint us as to who these characters might be. So first, let's take a look at the taller Red Zora. The accessories and even fins that this Zora has gives the impression that he is higher on the food chain of the Zora. The Ascop shoulder armor and fins and the rope thingy he has is highly reminiscent of 18th century French officer coats, and these were mostly worn by officers in the army, who were most educated and led troops in combat, but weren't frontline soldiers themselves. Our Zora friend here is also highly fashionable, apparently, for his ascot that he wears was considered a high fashion piece in early to modern Eastern Europe in places like Britain, Italy, and France. History! At first, I thought maybe he was going to be this version's of King Zora, but a close look at the background of this shot in the trailer shows another, much larger Zora behind him and Link. In past Zelda games, the largest Zora has usually been the head honcho, so it could be that this Red Zora is more of a second in command. And keeping in mind of our history lesson but a moment ago, his accessories and character design could be confirmation of that. He's an officer. Not the head honcho, not foot soldier. Middle ground. Plus the one in the background looks like he's a little bit more decked out in regal looking attire. We also see another Red Zora, but a lot smaller and a female. And of course, our first thoughts of her is that she is going to be the Breath of the Wild's version of Princess Ruto. Now a theory for y'all. I think that this Ruto is daughter to the Red Zora we see before. Colors aside that they both have red scales, they have other similarities with gold eyes, downward fins at the side of their heads, spots going down the tails of their heads, and similar choker accessories. But that's not the full theory. I'm proposing that this Ruto is not the daughter of King Zora, if the one cut off in the background is the king, as I suggested earlier. But it's obvious that she does hold great importance in this game. So whether or not she's a princess specifically, or some kind of other high stature, is kind of up for debate right now. A real in-depth, heavy thought-out theory, I know. Keeping on the thought train with the Zora girl. Theory number 2! Or is it 3? I'm not keeping track. It kind of looks like Link is giving her something, and I wish to point out that it's glowing blue and has a very water-like effect about it. So could it be that we could actually see the spiritual gems return in this game with the Kokiri Emerald, the Goron Ruby, and the Zora Sapphire? I don't have any other real evidence that this could be the case, but we do see that the Goron has the symbol of the Goron Ruby on his chain belt accessory. Now that being said, we have seen Gorons implementing this design into their tattoo work and even architecture in other Zelda games without the ruby ever being mentioned. It's a long shot at best. But with the Deku Tree returning, with a very similar design to the Ocarina of Time's Deku Tree, I might add, who was the guardian of the Kokiri Emerald, the Gorons in the mountain and volcano-like setting where the Goron Ruby was kept, and the young Zora girl who is seen with something shining a blue color just like Ruto with the Zora Sapphire in Ocarina of Time, the possibility is there. The plot does thicken. And with all of that said, I'm going to leave things here and we are going to continue this conversation in part 3. The next video, we are going to look at the gameplay mechanics, aesthetics, and weapons of The Legend of Zelda Breath in the Wild that we saw in the E3 gameplay videos. So, be sure to check in on Tuesdays when Andrew usually uploads, Fridays when Sarah usually uploads, and Sundays when we do gaming. Until next time, geek on.